Hey there, this is kind of a compilation of what Echo and I have been working on for the first half of his board and train. So since we had already done some work inside during his day school and he was doing really well, I wanted to try bringing him outside. So this is just the backyard. Obviously he's been back here before because it's where we go out to play and potty, but it definitely brings up the level of distractions. So I want to start off by just making sure that he's able to focus a bit. So I'm going to wait for some offered check-ins. Once he's able to offer some check-ins just as a default, I'm going to make it a little bit harder by doing this Zen dog. So I have treats in either hand and I'm going to hold them out and wait for him to focus on me instead of the treats, and then I can mark and treat. I'm also going to start making it a little bit harder by tossing the treats out for him to find and then waiting for him to default back to check in with me. And once I've had some good check-ins from this, I'm going to start adding in his name. So I'll toss out a treat for him to find, and once he finds it, I'll say Echo and then mark and treat when he looks back at me. I'm going to start increasing the distance so we can turn this into a bit of a recall. So this time I'll toss out the treat to say find it. And then once he finds the treat, I'll say Echo here. As soon as he starts coming towards me, I'm going to give him some nice happy praise. And once he's all the way to me, I'm going to mark and treat. And I'm going to be gradually varying how far I'm tossing the treat and also my orientation to it afterwards. So you'll see me toss it out, but then also move it a little bit so that he has to find me again. I'm also going to start asking him for some other behaviors after the recall. So after he comes back to me, I then want to ask for a sit or a hand touch, or I might even do a bit of a collar grab. So I'll say grab and then just kind of reach towards his collar. And I'm going to start alternating between these just to kind of help proof the behaviors between each other. Now there's a moment here where he gets startled because there's someone on the other side of the fence. It's just my neighbor. But so I'm going to put a pause on the training so that I can help him get through the alarm of having someone there. So when he looks over at them, I'm just going to call him back and then mark and treat when he checks in with me. And we do that a few times, and then he kind of decides that the person's not a threat anymore and is ready to go back to training. So especially as we start working outside, there's going to be moments and things that just kind of startle him a little bit. And in those moments, I'm going to put training on pause and work on helping him through those big feelings instead. So we're going to start working on some return to heel position. I tried doing this inside, but there just wasn't enough space for him to feel like he could do this. So that's one of the reasons I took it outside. So I have a treat in my hand, and I'm just going to use it to lure him into this nice do-si-do onto my left-hand side. So he'll pass up my left-hand side, then go back into heel position, facing the same direction I am. Once we've practiced returning to heel position a few times, I'm going to start doing this 40-degree pivot so that he can kind of find heel position again. So I'm going to have him return to heel position, mark and treat, pivot 90 degrees. Once he's back in that heel position, I can mark and treat, pivot 90 degrees again, have him find it, and mark and treat once he finds it. And then I'm just going to proof that a little bit by adding in some other like hand touches and things before seeing if we can't go back to finding that heel position. I wanted to see if we could start getting some distance as well. That was a bit harder though. So we're going to head inside to practice some of the skills that he's not quite as proficient in yet. And we're going to start with this down hand signal. So I'm using the hand signal kind of off the ground, slightly off the ground, to prompt him into this down. And as soon as he's in the down, I'm going to mark and treat from my other hand. So I'm no longer having to use the treat there as a way of getting him into the down. He's now able to just follow that hand signal. And then once he's in the down, I can mark and treat out of the other hand. So I'm gradually going to be getting this hand signal a bit higher. And I'm going to be doing this a bit variably. So sometimes I'm going to have it higher, and then other times I'm going to lower it again. So I'm just going to be alternating the height of that hand signal while gradually getting it higher off the ground. And so you're also going to see me ditching that stool as we progress. I wanted to do a little bit of play with him. So here I'm practicing basically fetch, but I'll also call this two-toy play. So basically I have two nearly identical toys. I'm going to toss one out, encourage him to get it. This was a little bit hard at first. He didn't really understand picking it up. So I want to encourage him to get it. And then once he returns with the first one, I'm going to use the second one to entice him to drop the first one and then toss out the second one. So initially we're just kind of troubleshooting, wanting to pick up the toys. And then we're going to start encouraging him to bring them back to us and drop them. So at this point, I'm not using the word drop it, but that is one of the intended outcome of this game. It's also to just encourage him to bring things to us instead of playing keep away. We're then going to switch to some place training. So previously I've been working on him confidently and comfortably getting on, particularly with the cue of place. So since he already has that, I'm going to go ahead and cue him into place. And then I'm going to put on a recording of the relaxation protocol. So this is divided into 14 days. This is just going to be day 1. And the recording's going to kind of read me through some different paces, just some different durations, distances, and distractions to go through. And the criteria is that he just has to keep all 4 feet on the bed. So as it goes through the different criteria, like wait 5 seconds or take a step back or take a step to the right, as long as he's able to keep all 4 feet on the bed, I'm going to drop a treat onto the bed after I complete the criteria. If he gets off at any point, that's okay. I'm just going to say whoops, point him back on, and then wait for another criteria before treating him again. So I don't want to treat him immediately for getting back on. That's also why I'm not going to use the word place. I'm just going to say whoops and point back to it. And then I'm going to wait for another criteria to pass before dropping a treat. Now, part of the goal of this is that it should be an implied stay. So the objective is that once he's on it, he stays until released. And that would be the release is a free and a beckoning motion. That's one of the objectives, but the other is to actually start to settle and relax a little bit. So initially you're going to see him sitting a lot, but my ultimate goal is to have him laying down nice and settled on the bed. So to help encourage this behavior, I'm going to be dropping the treats onto the bed, and this is just going to help encourage an overall kind of downward motion. I'm also, because of this, I'm not going to be marking. I'm just going to be, maybe offering some gentle praise, but mostly just dropping the treats in front of him and on the bed. And this is because oftentimes, though the marker tells the dog that that's the correct thing, it's also oftentimes kind of a keep going cue and can kind of energize our dogs. And I don't want him necessarily getting energized or excited here. I just want him to settle. Now, this is our first day and our first time kind of adding some criteria to this. And you can tell by his overall body language, the wagging tail, and all that he is pretty excited. So I'm not going to get to relaxation today, and that's okay. Since he wasn't able to get through the whole recording without getting off, he got off a lot. It just means that we're going to try again with the same day's recording tomorrow. So every day we're going to try to go through a recording. And if we're able to get through the whole recording without any exits from the place bed, then I'm going to move on to the next day's recording. And if he does get off, then we'll just practice again on the same day the following day. And I'm saying days because the relaxation protocol is divided into 14 days, but days is very much in quotation marks. It's more just to, that's what you're going to cover in a day. So this is the next day. We're going to go out to practice our recall in the backyard. And we have an added distraction for this recall practice. It's one of my dogs. So you may have noticed when we first came out, they were hopping around playing. And so I'm going to practice recalling them away from play. So that first recall was really hard, so I stayed closer to them. And now you can see they're almost harder to distract away from me because now they know that I have treats. Since my dog wasn't being a very good play distractor, I went ahead and put her back inside so that just Echo and I could work. So we're going to do some recall, some hand touches, which I'm kind of using as a recall here. I'm going to practice that collar grab and some sits with that recall, just so that we're practicing some different recall and some things that we might ask him to do after a recall. And then we're going to start going into some walking practice. So I have him return to heel position, and then I'm going to do that 90-degree pivot. And here I'm going to start adding some distance between those 90-degree pivots. So initially I was just pivoting 90 degrees, but now I'm also taking a step. And then I'm going to gradually be increasing the distance between those pivots until we kind of get to this point where I'm able just to walk a straight line with him. So here's where I'm going to start adding in some verbal cues. So I'm going to ask him for a sit. And I'm going to ask for the sit up against the barrier because I want him to be facing the same direction I am. And that's mostly just me being picky. He completes the sit just fine. He just usually turns outward or turns in front of me. And then after the sit, I'm going to mark and treat. And then I'm going to say, let's go. And that's to indicate that we're walking together. And then whenever I do this 180-degree turn, I'm just going to say this way and then turn. And just every couple of steps, I'm going to mark and treat. And I'm going to vary the number of steps between treats. So I don't want them always getting harder. So sometimes I might treat for every step, and then sometimes I might wait a few steps. But I'm going to be alternating. So I'm not even really keeping count of how many steps I'm waiting between treats. But I am just trying to keep it inconsistent so that he never knows when a treat is going to come. I'm pretty impressed though. He's doing really well with kind of following in this nice use heel position. So we're going to finish up with a little bit of recall and then head inside to work on his place. So I go ahead, and before I start the recording, I want to just practice a little bit of prompting him onto place and then releasing him from it. So I'm going to prompt him to place. I will mark and treat once he's on it, and then I'll say free and do a beckoning motion to indicate to get off of the place. And then I'm going to prompt him on again, prompt him off again. Finally, I'm going to prompt him on and then just start the day one recording. So you can see he's already gotten up a couple of times, so that just tells me that we're going to have to do this one again. But, and it may not seem like it, I do have this on triple speed, so that goes a little bit faster. But he is still staying on for longer than he did the day before. So even though he's still getting off quite often, you'll see a much bigger time between him getting off where he just is able to maintain the position. What you'll also notice is that his tail is not going nearly as rapidly. And not because he's finding this aversive in any way. He's still very attentive and in the game and enjoying himself. But he's just gradually starting to bring down this energy level. And you can see that also indicated by the fact that he kind of laid down for the first time. And I think I'm able to get that out of him a couple more times during this session before the recording stops. So all that tells me is that we are slowly but surely headed in the right direction with this place training. And it's just something that we're going to continue to practice. So the why for the place training, there's a few reasons. Earlier I referred to it as an implied stay, which makes it a great option for when we kind of need him in a particular spot so that he's not getting underfoot or jumping on anything. It's also a great option for when he is kind of getting excited and we need him to settle down. It gives him a place to go to settle down. So I'm going to let you watch this for a bit on triple speed so you can kind of see how he's progressing through it. And then I'll come back when we're switching gears. So once the recording ends, I'm going to release him with a free and a beckoning motion. And then I want to pick up the bed so that he doesn't try to get on again. So this is going to seem a little bit confusing because now I have a different platform and I'm actually encouraging him to get on it. But this time I'm not going to be treating him for getting on because the intention here is not for him to stay on this platform. Just the opposite, it's to teach an off cue. So this is a time, it's just an appropriate item for him to jump on. So I'm going to just kind of use some verbal praise to encourage him to get up. And then once he's up, I'm going to say off and toss some treats on the ground. I usually also do a bit of an offhand signal, which almost looks like a stop sign. And then I'm going to repeat this again by kind of encouraging him on and then saying off and tossing some treats onto the ground. After we repeat this a few times, I'm going to kind of test it. So I'm going to encourage him to get on, and then I'm just going to say off, give him a moment to see if he can get off from just the verbal cue, and if so, then I will mark and treat. My first attempt isn't a success, but you can see now he's not even getting all the way on anymore because that was becoming too much trouble since he knew I was just going to then prompt him off. So he's just putting 2 feet on. I then am saying off and marking and treating once he gets off. And so now you can see one of the real life implications to this is that we are going to use this off for when he's getting a little bit jumpy. So as he starts to come up to me, I'm going to say off and then mark and treat as long as he keeps 4 feet on the floor. So that could be in a sit, down, stand, doesn't matter. He just needs to have 4 feet on the floor and I will mark and treat. So we're going to switch into some downs. And you can see now I've ditched that step stool for this down practice. And I'm instead using that hand signal from a stand. So this kind of looks like a very exaggerated move, which it is. So it can take a little while to get that hand signal all the way up. and switching it to a verbal. But you can see he's doing pretty well with me gradually kind of increasing the height. Now there's going to be a moment here where he starts to have some trouble. And that just tells me that I've raised criteria too quickly. So I've asked him to recognize a hand signal at a height that he's not quite ready to recognize it at. And I don't want him to continuously fail at this because it's just going to kind of bum him out. So once I see that he's had trouble a couple of times, I'm going to switch to just a simple pattern game. And this is just going to be a nice pin jump pattern game. So I'm going to toss a treat one direction for him to find. Once he checks back in with me, I'm going to mark and toss a treat the opposite direction for him to find. And I'm just going to alternate this toss treat, and I'm going to continue tossing the treats as long as he's able to check in with me. Now that he's had some time to kind of focus and check in, I want to see if he can do that down again, but he's having trouble. So I'm going to try to see if he can do a hand touch. This is one of the practical uses of a hand touch, is to kind of judge where he is. So, okay, you can't do a down. Can you do a hand touch? And he can. So now we can try that down again, and he's able to do it. Since he was able to do that down, I'm going to then end the down session there and switch to some sit stays. So for this sit stay, I'm going to ask for a sit. I'm going to mark and treat for that sit. I then am going to say stay, do my little stay hand signal, mark and treat for that stay. I'm going to do that a couple of times, and then I'm going to say free with a beckoning motion, and then mark and treat once he gets out of that sit. So with any stay, there's kind of 3 criteria that we're going to gradually be increasing, and that's going to be duration, distance, and distractions. So you notice initially I'm just kind of working on that duration. Then I'm going to start to add some distance, so I'm going to take a step or 2 back, and then come back, mark and treat, and release. Then later on, we'll add in some distractions. Today, I'm just adding in the slightest bit of duration and distance. And then I want to give him a break to move around afterwards. So after a couple of sit stays, I'm going to just let him find some tossed treats before doing another one. And one of the reasons for this is really because he's still young. So when our pups are young and still growing, I don't want them maintaining that sit stay for very long. It just requires a lot of muscle and tendon growth that they don't quite have yet. So we're going to wait on increasing duration till he's a bit older when it comes to the sit stay. So we're going to switch gears here, and this is another relaxation exercise. In this relaxation exercise, I'm going to start with him on leash and me having a foot on leash. Now, that's not to force him to stay in a certain position. That's just to signal what it is that we're doing. So I'm going to start by guiding him into a down, and I'll drop some treats once he's in that down. If he gets up, I'm then going to guide him in it again. And I'll repeat that 3 times, and then I want to see if he can't default into the down, since now he's been reinforced for that a few times. And initially, I just get this sit. And I will take that initially because it's a step in the right direction. So you can see when he offers the sit, I'm going to go ahead and treat him, but I am going to kind of treat him a bit lower to encourage him to get into that down. Now, if he jumps on me or onto the table, I'm just going to stand up and kind of block him. And I'm going to use that stand to interrupt the jumping behavior. But I'm mostly just waiting for him to default into a down. And once he's in that nice down, I want to see if I can start reinforcing for any behavior towards relaxation. So that could be taking longer, deeper breaths, rolling onto a hip like he had right then. It could be doing a big yawn. It could be laying his head down. Basically, I'm reinforcing anything that's kind of a step towards relaxation. So right here, you can see he's in a down, which is nice, but it's a ready down or like a sphinx down. And there he's spooted out a little bit. So I'm going to reinforce for that kind of laying on his hip. So I'll often call this real relaxation. And basically this is relaxation we're doing together. And I often use this as practice for being a patio dog or for just hanging out with us. So initially we're just practicing here in my kitchen, just at my kitchen table. And then we're going to practice this a couple more places outside before bringing it out. We're going to practice it a couple more places inside before bringing it outside. And I'm just going to be gradually increasing the distractions around him while we practice this relaxation. But in time, we'll be able to practice this while there's people walking around him and maybe while we're having like a cup of coffee or something. But for now, it's just about laying the groundwork of reinforcing him for settling while he's on leash next to us. And this is also great practice of just reinforcing nice default behaviors. So I like to practice this one on a leash just because I do usually take it on the road with me. But you could also just practice this around the house while you're having your morning coffee. You'll also notice I have a little bit of a mat here. I usually will have a mat just because I think it makes it more comfortable for the dog. But you can also have a mat so that way it's another kind of physical cue that tells the dog what it is that we're working on. And also, if the mat is portable, then you can bring it with you different places and use it as a physical cue to tell the dog what it is that we're working on. But you'll see later on, I don't use the same mat. So I want to take a moment to say, okay, let's go. Get up, do some hand touches, and then I want to see if he can go back into this nice settle down on his own. So there's kind of two challenges with this relaxation. One is getting into a nice relaxed pose and, being able to do that quickly and easy, which is one of the things he's learning here. And then the other one is maintaining it. Some dogs have more trouble initially getting into relaxation and others have trouble maintaining it. So that's why I will occasionally let them get up, walk around, so that then they can practice settling from the beginning again. So for his first time practicing this one, he's doing really well. Before I finish, I do want to make sure he's in this nice settled down. And then I will usually tell him we're done by saying okay free and getting up so that he has to get up with me. But I want to make sure that he's practiced some relaxed down before I kind of end it. So we work on this for a while. I'm going to cut out some of it just because it's a lot of him settling. And I think you kind of get the gist of what it looks like. You can see he's doing really well. And I'm just going to periodically be gently praising him and dropping some treats at his feet. Just like with play, since this is about relaxation, I'm not going to be marking. I'm just going to be gently dropping some treats for him. Here I wanted to introduce a snuffle mat. So this is a form of enrichment. It's kind of a puzzle toy. And it's also a foraging enrichment toy. So it's a food foraging toy. Basically, the snuffle mat has these little pieces of fabric that imitate grass. And you can sprinkle some treats in it. Or in this case, it's just some kibble. And then he has to sniff through all these little pieces of fabric to find the treats. And this is really great for fulfilling that need to forage. You can also do this in actual grass. It's just that all my grass is dead right now, and I can wash the snuffle mat pretty easy. But I'll often practice this around countertops because it helps the dog learn that they can forage all they want on the ground, that food is on the ground, and they can find it there if they just sniff and look hard enough. And they don't need to use the countertops for foraging. Oftentimes that counter surfing is an offshoot of a foraging behavior. So we want to give them numerous opportunities throughout the day to forage. And I would encourage usually feeding him out of some sort of toy. You're going to see I have a lot of different puzzle toys for the dogs to feed out of. This is just a nice foraging one, but there's also ones that are more puzzle-like and offer some different difficulties and challenges to overcome. This one's just really about using his nose to find the food. It's going to use up a lot of that mental energy, and it's going to take him a while to eat his dinner this way. So it should take him a good 20-30 minutes to eat his dinner. With my own dogs, I'll sometimes do this by just tossing the kibble out around the room or amongst some Amazon boxes. So we're going to switch gears here, and I'm going to work a bit on that off, but also on kind of just passively offering something other than jumping on me. So you can see I'm going to try to get excited and be silly and kind of encourage some excited upward movement, but then I'm going to stop. And when he offers anything other than jumping, but especially a sit, I'm going to mark and treat. So this is a little bit of jazz up and settle, getting excited, letting him get excited at the same time, and then settling with my hands at my core, waiting for him to go into a sit, and then marking and treating. We're then going to switch gears to work on some down. So you can see I'm doing that hand signal, and I'm kind of starting the hand signal closer to the ground than where we left off the day before. So even though the day before I was kind of getting close to my knees on this hand signal, I'm going to start it way down at like my ankles again. And then during the session, I'm going to gradually be increasing the height of this hand signal. So sometimes it'll get higher, then it'll get lower again, then higher again, then lower again. Just so we can overall gradually bring it higher. He's doing pretty well with this. I am taking it a little bit slow just to make sure he doesn't get burnt out or discouraged in trying. But overall, we are starting to get some height to this hand signal, and he's doing a pretty good job. One of the things he is trying to do is after I mark, as I start bringing down the treat, he starts to get up. So I want to make sure that I'm then bringing my treat hand all the way down. So I'm treating him in a down position and not like a cobra position. We're going to move on to that sit stay. And so you can see today I'm just going to be adding in some different distances and trying to get a little bit more distracting with these distances. But I'm still going to keep it at a pretty short duration because I don't want his still developing muscles to get fatigued during this exercise. And then we're going to switch to some place. So we're going to do the day 1 relaxation protocol again. I have this on triple speed, so that's why it seems like it's so fast, even though there is a good bit of duration here. But you can see he's already doing so much better than that first day. He's able to stay on for so much longer, and you can see he's really starting to think about settling once we're going into this as well. So he's kind of learning to relax and settle a little bit when we're doing this exercise. I'm going to cut out some in the middle here just because you kind of already know what it looks like. And honestly, even though he's doing so much better, he does still end up getting off before I released him. So we're going to have to practice this day again anyway. But I'm going to cut out some in the middle and then show you what he's looking like by the end. So by this point, he has jumped off a couple times, but when he hasn't jumped off, he spent most of his time in a sit and with a nice settled tail. And then he just decided here to go into this nice down. And he's actually going to do a good job maintaining this nice relaxed on his side down. So much so that I'm actually going to praise him a few more times after the recording ends and then release him. So now we're going to start practicing some stuff in my front yard. So this is just my front patio. There's some neighbors getting home from work that are providing an extra distraction for him. So we're going to kind of hide out behind the bushes. And I'm going to start same way I started in the backyard, just seeing if he can offer some nice check-ins and eye contact. And once I get a few good offered check-ins, I'm going to start making it a little bit harder by tossing the treat out for him to find and then waiting for him to check back in after finding the treat. And since he does well with that pretty quickly, I'm going to start adding in his name. So I'm going to toss the treat, have him find it, then say echo. And when he looks back at me, marking treat. I can do the same thing with this Zen dog. So I'm going to hold the treats out in either hand, call his name, have him check in with me, and then mark and treat from there. Now you'll notice every so often he kind of looks behind him towards the camera, and that's because of noises of the neighborhood, just kind of being an extra distraction. And that's why I'm starting off with just this, are you able to check in with me? Are you able to respond to your name? Because if you can't do that, we're not going to get much else done around these distractions. But you can see, even though he is a little bit distracted by them, he's able to check back in with me with relative ease. I'm very impressed that he's able to do that so well. This is a big challenge for a lot of dogs. Since he's doing so well, I want to start seeing if we can get some other cues while we're here. So I'm going to ask him for some sits and some hand touches. And then I'm actually going to see if we can start doing a little bit of walking. So this walking is just going to be a bit of a back and forth on my front patio. It is a little bit cramped, so it's not going to be too graceful, but that's okay. I'm not really looking for a perfect heel. I'm mostly just looking for him following me and checking in with me, even though I'm moving along. So as long as he's able to stay with me or try to stay with me and can check in, I'll continue to mark and treat. Now, if he does move ahead like he did just then, I'm going to say whoops and then stop. And I'm going to wait for him to reconnect with me. And then I'll have him return to heel position and we'll continue walking again. So we did really well with that, considering that was our first time out front. Back inside, I want to do a little bit of a play session with him. And my hopes is to get him playing with tug. So I have this nice big tug rope. He's actually been enjoying playing tug with this with the other dogs. So I thought it might be a good one for us to try and play with. But you can see I'm having to try a little bit harder than the other dogs do. So I'm dragging it on the ground, trying to encourage him to engage with me. Now, oftentimes, you're going to see me letting him kind of quote-unquote win this game of tug. And that's because I want to encourage him to play this game with me and also bring it back to me. If I was to always be the one ending up with the tug toy, that wouldn't be very much fun for him. And he would decide that he'd rather not play with me. He'd rather go play with the other dogs. So that's why instead I'm going to often toss the toy out for him to get, or I'm going to tug on it for a little bit and then let him get it. And that way he's encouraged to come back and continue playing tug with me. So there's a couple good benefits to this tug game. One is that we are encouraging him to bring us stuff instead of playing keep away. But the other is this jazz up and settle game. So I'm going to get him a little bit jazzed up playing the tug game. And then I'm going to settle by standing upright, having my hands at my core. And I'm going to wait for him to drop the toy and go into a sit. And then I can mark and treat. You can also teach a drop it this way, but I usually prefer the 2-toy game for that. After playing, I want to focus, get him a little bit focused, let him know that it's time to do some training. So we do a bit of a pattern game, and then we're going to go into those downs. So you can see me doing the same hand signal, just starting to get him into the rhythm of those downs. I'm going to start off pretty easy and then see if we can't start getting the hand signal higher. And now that I have the hand signal higher, this is when you're really going to see him starting to go up for the treat instead of waiting for me to bring the treat all the way down to him. And I really don't want him doing that kind of cobra half down. So what I'm going to do is, even if he starts, once I've marked, I need to give him the treat. That's kind of the contract, is 1 mark equals 1 treat. But I don't want to give him the treat as soon as he gets to it. I'm going to still bring my treat hand all the way down so that he has to be in down position, and then I will actually give him the treat. So I want to be sure to always be treating him in position, even if he's kind of broken that position by trying to get up a little bit. So you can see him kind of starting to do that here, where he tries to get up a bit. And that's just him trying to get to the treat a little bit faster. So I just have to be consistent in treating him in position. He's a very fast, smart dog. So he's going to try to find these shortcuts a lot. And it's very clever. It's kind of just a smart thing he's going to do. But since he's a smart guy, it doesn't take him long to figure out that, oh, I'm only going to get this if I'm in this position, so I should just stay in this down position. And after a few times of me insisting on treating him in position, you can see now that he's much better at staying in that down and waiting for the treat instead of trying to get up and get that treat. So since he was doing really well with this, I thought about starting to introduce the verbal down. So when I do that, I'm going to pair the verbal cue with the old cue. So I'm going to say down and then do the hand signal and mark and treat once he's in the hand signal, once he's in the down. I tried this twice, and both times he had a really delayed response to the hand signal. So I decided to give it a rest, and we'll practice the verbal down tomorrow when he doesn't have such a delayed response to it. We're going to practice this sit stay a little bit, and here you're going to see me adding in some different distractions. So not so much about me moving away or keeping him there for longer, but me more doing funny movements. So I am keeping an eye on his back legs because I want to make sure he has a nice tuck sit. If his feet start to splay out or his knees start to splay out or buckle, that tells me they're getting a bit fatigued and I would want to switch to a different behavior. Similarly, if he does a little bit of a soppy puppy sit when I ask for that sit, I then am going to switch to something else, like an off. He's doing really well with that off. I'm going to start to introduce a wait at the door here. So this is the back door that goes to the backyard. So not as exciting as the front door, but still kind of exciting. And I'm not going to re-ask him for a sit or a down. I might suggest a down, but I really just want him waiting. So I would rather him be in a down, and later on, once we have a better down cue, I'll be doing most of those stays in a down while he's a puppy. Just because puppies can maintain a down stay a lot longer than a sit stay. So I would prefer if this wait at the door was in a down, but it's mostly just about not moving forward while the door is opening. And then once the door is open and he gets Reese through it, I want him to turn back and check in with me, and I'll mark and treat for that check-in. So I'm going to say wait, mark and treat as long as he's able to wait, open the door, Reese with a free and a beckoning motion, and then call him back so that he checks in with me once he's outside. So this is going to be just a little bit of kind of passive training. I'm just going to be getting some stuff done on the kitchen counter here, and I want to see if he might be tempted to jump up on the counter, and if so, I can use that off to prompt him down from the counter. And if he doesn't try it, if he approaches the counter without jumping up, I can just mark and drop some treats on the ground. He was doing really well, so I'm going to try to tempt him a little bit more by having some of his treats on the counter. But you can see he just walks up and offers, a sit or a check-in instead. So pretty great. This is another puzzle toy. This one's a little bit different. That's about sniffing. He knows where the treats are. They're in these little wells in the toy. And it's more about just some constructive dissonance. So it's a challenge for him. It's a sight challenge that he's going to figure out and overcome. And this can really help build his confidence in trying new things and trying to figure things out. So this is just a little bit of a mental exercise that can really help with his overall confidence in trying new things. And then we're going to go into our place. So I'm going to prompt him onto the bed, start the day one recording. I have this on triple speed because you kind of know what this is all about now. What I mostly want to point out, though, is just how well he's doing, especially compared to the first day when he was hopping on and off over and over again. Now you can see even when he got off there, it was a more slow, deliberate off. I dropped a treat and he got right back on. And he's going to start spending a lot more time in a down as well. So in the last session that we did with Place, he finished with a nice big down. And because I heavily rewarded that, he's going to get into a down much quicker on this session and maintain it a lot longer. Now he does still get off a few times before I've released him. So we're going to repeat this again, but I'm really impressed by the improvement he's made just in a few days with this place behavior. And not just with being able to maintain it, but really embracing it as kind of a calm, relaxed place to be. You can really tell that his demeanor has started to change once he's on his place bed. So I cut out a bit there just because I didn't think you needed to see the whole thing. But as the recording finishes up, I'm just going to release him with a free and a beckoning motion, and then I'm going to pick up the bed so he doesn't get confused. Here, the recording actually ends right after he had gotten off, but I'm going to just continue to hang out there for a bit more, reinforce him for settling. I want to make sure he's settled before I release him from it